This sucks. Caught myself a bit of a flu, or whatever you call this. And now I haven't done anything at all. I got enough strength to at least sit down on my computer screen again, so... Here we go, fuck off, man.
With another new core Pokemon game, there is now another champion awaiting us, all for another grand battle.
As I said, I believe we are actually almost close to the end of the game.
In the game and has a design that immediately stands out.
So the game has a deceptively
you
large...
know this is supposed to be an important character right away.
I have a sage slot on the third.
The inevitable question
Weird.
comes up. How strong is Geeta?
Wait, I'm back
Geeta
here.
is still a very new character to the series, so we don't have the power of hindsight and alternate considerations and viewpoints in the same way that we did when we did our video for Diantha. Even Leon's video was done almost 2 years after the release of Sword and Shield, so some of the hype surrounding the character had calmed down at least a little bit by then. Geeta, however, hasn't had the hype that some characters tend to get before the release that would make expectations unrealistic. Most fans went in not really knowing what to expect, and what we got, well, let's just take a look at where she stands. Before we start though, today is Sunday, so that means we have another segment of Should You Use This Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet over on Mystic Umbreon Shorts. This week
well, let me go.
And it's a rather interesting choice. Also over on Mystic Reads, we have another segment of Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto Edition, an adventure with Ash and Serena traversing the Kanto region. I will leave the Palafin video and link to Mystic Reads in the description below and iCard above. With that said, let's get going. Geeta has a rather imposing yet stoic presence throughout the game, but is generally quite nice to the protagonist. Most of what you find out about her is more through comments from other trainers and NPCs. She is a very strict chairwoman, and is very hard on the gym leaders of the region, causing several of them to not care for her very much. And yeah, that's kind of it. Honestly, the characterization here feels even lighter than Diantha in some ways in X and Y. At least Diantha technically had more going on in lore when it came to her being an actress. It kind of allowed your imagination to assume that she's a very busy person, and that her influence was probably felt beyond just people in the world of Pokemon battling. Don't get me wrong, being a chairwoman of a Pokemon league and such is also going to be a busy job. But that's the thing. I don't know anything about her outside of her being this boss character in a Pokemon game. Even if she has more dialogue or something, it just doesn't feel like it amounts to anything that makes her as interesting as literally any other champion in the series. I really can't be bothered to compare her to, say, Leon. And by the way, keep in mind, I did a video on Diantha a while back, and I was quite critical of her bare characterization in X and Y. So the fact that she's the first champion I think to compare her to isn't the best start. Of course, as far as how strong she is, she does have the stereotypical personality one would associate with a strong champion. But I really wish there was more done with the character, because Scarlet and Violet have some fun, charismatic characters, and it's unfortunate that the champion isn't one of them. So fans even think she's some type of AI character and not exactly human because of how strangely flat she comes off at times, as well as the fact that the game already plays around with this concept. You also see theories about how she might be some kind of fraud that manipulated her way to the top as a potential plot twist fans want to see. And a lot of this is likely wishful thinking that they'll do something to recontextualize how empty the character feels to some of the player base that wanted more. Though I will say there are a few things about the character within context of the lore that does raise a few eyebrows, but that could be my own projection. We can at least hope that when she gets an anime adaptation, they'll tap more into the character's potential. Now for the part that actually determines her strength more clearly for a lot of people, her team. After all, sometimes characters in Pokemon speak louder with their actions than their words, so let's see what she uses. Opening up the battle on her team is Espathra, a new psychic type with 101 base special attack, 105 speed, and 95 HP. It's not a bad Pokemon, but for a champion, it's definitely nothing special. Its stat distribution is good, but it only has 485 base stat total. which isn't what I would expect from the choice from champions in more recent generations. But usually champions do have 1 or 2 sub 500 stat total Pokemon, and obviously that stat total definitely isn't everything. It has Lumina Crash for solid stab damage, and Dazzling Gleam for coverage that still takes advantage of that strong special attack stat. Reflect is your standard status move that many NPC trainers tend to have, but then there's that 4th move, Quick Attack. Why? It only has 40 base physical power and non-stab for this Pokemon, as Pathra also only has 60 base physical attack. Why would you ever have this over almost any other move? It's just ridiculous. Next, we've got Go-Goat on their team. Now, let me preface this by saying, I think Go-Goat is underrated as
I just realized there aren't any Dark Elementals.
That 531 base stat total is pretty good, and it at least deserves some respect. That being said, it's still Go-Goat, a very standard, basic grass type that is very odd to see on a champion. It feels like a Pokemon more meant for players, and more ordinary trainers. Maybe if there was some sort of story reason for her having these types of Pokemon, it'd feel different. Kind of like how Red has Pikachu on its roster. For its moves, it's got Horn Leech, Play Rough, Bulk Up, and Zen Headbutt. Nothing too weird going on here. This is a pretty acceptable Go-Goat. It's just not really something you're immediately going to feel threatened by if you know what you're doing and have a decent team yourself.
Oh, okay.
And one more thing before I forget. Why is Go-Goat here? I know that sounds redundant to ask, but
these are some good Gen 6
Pokemon. A cool looking Gen 6 Pokemon nonetheless, but I just have so many questions about this choice. Even the biggest
CA wearing drip. What the fuck, where did this come from?
For seemingly no reason.
Wow, this channel is riddled with ads.
Even the biggest Go-Goat defenders can't get over that it's just here on this team for seemingly no reason. Next, we have yet another Pokemon with less than 500 base stat total, Veluza. But Veluza is at least a new Gen 9 Pokemon to show off. But if you've made it this far, you've already seen it used by a gym leader, and it wasn't exactly impressive. This Water Psychic type has a nice 102 base physical attack, but otherwise, the rest of its stats don't stick out much. It's not a bad Pokemon, but it's another one that doesn't feel at all like top champion material. The challenge here should want to be to use Pokemon like Go-Goat and Veluza to beat the champion, not have the champion actually using them. Gita's Veluza moveset is comprised entirely of physical attacks. All of them stab except for Ice Fang for coverage against your pesky grass types. I'd like to say here comes the truly great Pokemon next, but here's Avalugg. There are still worse Pokemon choices, but it's yet another Gen 6 era Pokemon that feels way out of place with the rest of her team composition. At least when Go-Goat was sent out, it was kind of funny, because it felt like something you'd expect from some randomizer Nuzlocke. But now, by this point, you're thinking, oh god, this is real. Her entire team is like this, isn't it? If Avalugg were more of an exception, I could see it working better if it had a crazy team surrounding it. You know, being caught off guard by a big ice monster with high attack, big physical defense, and some potentially good coverage. Somehow, this is the Pokemon that has the obligatory Earthquake move slot, which is fine. It's accompanied by Avalanche, Crunch, and Body Press. Though I'm not so sure about having your only stab attack be a decreased priority move. Yeah, Avalugg has high physical defense, but laughable special defense. At a mere 46,
am I missing something? Did I softlock myself out of the game by logging out the way I did?
Maybe things could be different. But it's unfortunately in a rough spot as an ice type that's even more vulnerable than usual to special attacks. Look, if they wanted her to use some Kalos Pokemon, that's fine. But this is a champion battle. There are dozens of options that fit with her team much better. I'm not trying to drink that Avalug haterade, but the fact of the matter is that Avalug ain't it. And now, finally something that kind of works here. King Gambit. A new Dark Steel type with fantastic physical stats. While not technically her ace, it does feel like it could have been her ace. Its only major issue is that it's slow at 50-base speed. But hey, we can work with this one for sure. Iron Head, Kotal Cleave, Zen Headbutt, Stone Edge, it's straightforward, yeah, but it's good stab and coverage on a strong Pokemon with a ton of resistances. The only problem with this typing here is the 4 times weakness to fighting. And the reason why I point it out as especially bad here is because Gen 9 introduced so many strong fighting Pokemon options. And you're definitely going to have at least one fighting type waiting to pounce on it with a stab attack to remove it from the match pretty quick. Many fans think this should have been her ace. And yeah, they're right. I won't harp on that anymore though, because if you've ever had a discussion about her team, then you've definitely heard this take 1,000 times already. And speaking of takes you've heard 1,000 times about Gita, we've got to talk about her actual ace, Glamora. This is a pretty decent Pokemon, but the fact she's likely to use a Pokemon with that incredible toxic debris ability Blast is insane. It's an ability that leaves toxic spikes on the ground when taking a physical hit, and it's literally the perfect set of Pokemon. And the fact that it's the last thing you face makes it feel like a total waste. Oh, but Mystic, Glamora resembles Gita's hair and stuff. Yeah, that's cool, but that doesn't mean it had to be her ace and waste something that could have actually been kind of awesome. It'd be the perfect eye-opener Pokemon, or at least something to use in any spot other than last. This is something that everyone has noticed about this encounter once they realized it had this ability. Oh yeah, I also have to talk about the moveset, huh? Terra Blast and Sludge Wave for stab, and Earth Power and Dazzling Gleam for coverage. Not really the best coverage to challenge ground types, its biggest threat, but whatever. We all know that's not the biggest problem here. It's a perfectly fine Pokemon with its 125 special attack stat, but her overall team strategy and placements feel like she's sabotaging herself here. At least this is one Pokemon that possibly could prevent a Skeledirge sweep due to its typing. Now that I've actually gone over her team like this myself, I can kind of see where the theories that she's canonically supposed to be some kind of fraud champion come from, and that there's something more sinister going on. But is that 500 IQ thinking or copia? I mean, the game doesn't really shy away from the fact that Nemona is a stronger and better trainer than her. Gita even says she's incapable of holding back, while Nemona did just that against her. Not to mention, they went along and made Nemona's Pokemon a higher level in the Academy Ace tournament. I don't mind Nemona being the stronger trainer. While her team isn't mind-blowing, it's better than our top champion here. Plus, I think it's safe to say she's probably the fan-favorite trainer of the game. If Gita's team had a few weird picks, but overall all came together well, my tone would be much more forgiving here. I gave Diantha a very fair shake and discussed a lot of the context surrounding her team in battle. But here, there are just no excuses. It doesn't even matter much whether you're over or under-leveled against Gita. The result is the same. And as we saw with the worst team, if even Spidops has a shot at sweeping her team, maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board with its composition. So, how strong is Gita? Well, in the canon of the games, she's still very respectable. But as far as the actual gameplay, yeah, she just might be the weakest champion in the series, and her characterization is going to be disappointing for many, especially after seeing how Sword and Shield handled Leon. And that sucks, because Scarlet and Violet have a lot going for them. And I think having a memorable champion would have been a great way to cap off the more traditional part of this Pokemon story. But what do you think? How do you feel about Gita? Did she actually manage to give you trouble? What kind of impression did she leave on you? Do you think I'm being too harsh? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching the video and for coming through and enjoying Scarlet and Violet with me. We've got so much content coming surrounding Gen 9 for the end of the year and beyond, including the top 10 strongest Pokemon, the best team for the games, and much more. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. When we get to 5,000 subs on the channel, we're gonna have a new series related to Scarlet and Violet that will be exclusive there. So go subscribe. Also, if you're into fan fictions or Genshin Impact, check out Mystic Reads and Tebachir. I offer a ton of creative.
Really? Everyone's level 13 now. Well, okay then. I guess she is just a brute now. I'm still kinda soft-locked. Come on, Ben Spider should have thought this through, right? Let me try a teleporter. Nope, that just teleported me to the start of the dungeon.
Alrighty, it's been a while since we've done a theory crafting video, and frankly I'm just in the mood to do that today, so that's what we're gonna do. I'm harboring no illusions that Hoyle will ever give all characters the time of day, but assuming there's even the slightest possibility that underpowered units will
It's
be
literally the
retroactively
exact
buffed,
same
that's enough to get entire
damage,
fan bases out of bed every morning.
except
Historically,
with the
unless
added
my memory
benefit
is
of it
wrong,
being
Genshin has
useful
only
against
ever
dark
buffed one
enemies.
character, and that is the Geodaddy himself, Mr. Zhong Li. After his underwhelming
Which
release
probably
in
means
version
it's
1.1, his banner
affecting
rewrite
the
version
final
of
boss.
1.3 gave him and the Geo element as a whole a very much needed pick-me-up. For him specifically, Zhong Li's Jade Shield was 50% stronger against all known sources of damage, effectively increasing his maxed out scaling by 1.5 times. Additionally, nearby enemies suffered a 20% decrease in resistance to all forms of damage. This, alongside the adjustment to Dominance of Earth, was enough to skyrocket him from below average to one of the most powerful supports in the entire game, a statement that holds true well over a year after. That was the only instance of a direct balance change given to a character in the almost 2 years Genshin has been out for. We've had 2 other systems changes though, primarily to Geo's elemental properties and transformative reactions like Overload, Swirl, and Electrocharge to name a few. Apart from that, Hoyo doesn't see fit to touch what they've already put out. The only reason they made an exception for Zhong Li was due in part to the overwhelmingly catastrophic public relations disaster that was expectations versus reality. Not that I blame the community. After bearing witness to the rich and storied lore of Morax's power and influence, only to find out he's potentially weaker than Noelle at the time was a bit embarrassing to say the least. That being said, the fact that they were willing to acquiesce to player demands meant they weren't above making balance changes. With that in mind, I wanted to make a video listing ways they can hypothetically give other characters the Zhong Li treatment in the hopes that they can more equally contend with the rest of the cast. So let's get to it. Really quickly though, before we continue, I just want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Keeps. I know Genshin can sometimes be frustrating, but malding over a game is never worth it. 2 out of 3 men will experience hair loss of some kind by the time they reach 35, but thanks to clinically proven, researched, and tested treatments, Keeps helps you improve your hair growth so you don't end up balding in life. All forms of treatment plans are doctor recommended and
Bullshit.
delivered straight to your door at roughly half the cost of a traditional pharmacy, so you don't have to visit a pharmacy or a doctor's office. Treatment products and refill reminders will be shipped to you based on your subscription plan. Speaking of which, each plan comes with a full year of unlimited messaging, so if you have any questions or
Alright, so I
concerns,
actually
you can
teleported
reach out to
after
your
all, never
prescribing
mind.
doctor about anything at any time.
But this still
Most kids'
sucks.
customers notice results within 6 months of starting treatment, so it will take a bit of time before you see things working, but considering it's to maintain a nice full head of hair, it's more than worth it. So, if you're concerned about hair loss in the possible future, head on over to keeps.com/Forest2 for 50% off your first order. Link is also in the description.
Fighting isn't
Thanks
worth
again to
it.
Keeps for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's get back into it. First, I think I should clarify that there's no such thing as weak units in Genshin, only inefficient ones. Even with the so-called low-tier units like Amber or Animal Traveler, you're never gonna run into a situation where they're entirely unusable. The way most gacha titles power scale their content is in accordance to the top 25 to 30 percentile of units. That is, the hardest thing in the game is only efficiently and comfortably doable with the top quarter of all units, and tier lists are usually formatted by that logic. I think by now most, if not all of us, are beginning to accept that Genshin was never meant to be one of those games. As much as I think endgame content would still be a worthwhile direction for the game's future, based on how they like to design their events, challenge and optimization of characters is outside of their realm of interest, at least for now. More focus is placed on exploration and discovery than trying to get the best equipment and artifacts for your characters.
Let me go check my previous recording.
Be that as it may, many of you might have seen my video on Power Creep a week or two ago, and I talked about how new characters appear to be evolved versions of existing 4-star ones in some way. Yelan is a 5-star alternative to Shinto, Kokomi is a 5-star version of Barbara, Ito is to Noelle, Yula is to Razor, albeit a different element, Shunhe is to Chonghyun.
Gross. Alright, that looks like the boss, so let's just... Huh, that lingo is from 2010? I've opened finale, then may as well get it over with. Oh god, it's a dungeon. An attack.
Alright, you got the doggies. And then Aerodactyl with the was that one of you have a leave yourself flying tree.
What?
Okay, good to know. Alright, so you have another loop.
Oh yeah, I can just
Agatha,
stop
clean it up.
huh?
Once you
Oh,
fly,
I got money
please fly
and
again.
XP from it.
Oh, really?
Wasn't the complete wave?
Agatha, no! So Agatha just defeated Agatha. We'll just take revenge. And it was done. It was inevitable.
I am indeed in the correct dungeon.
And even though our Agatha
Alright, so... the portal was replaced with an empty lethal orb. So the only way for me now to actually go back to that final dungeon is if I started a new game. You know what? I guess some games just weren't meant to be completed. I'm not going through this entire game again. Just to see the ending. Assuming this is where the game ends. And that the map is just deceiving us. But honestly, right now, I'm just not in the correct mindset to be playing right now. So, Fuck this shit, I'm out.